Yo.
What's up, dude?
Not much, man. Making another video. Want to be in a sketch?
No.
Why not?
I don't think people really like those. Seems like a waste of your time.
Well, how do you explain that then? Well, I guess we'll just start the video then. Boys and girls, welcome back to the channel for another how-to video. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with these, but for those of you in the Midwest, these are called books. I personally rescued this litter from a local shelter.
I grew tired and lonesome, but with every hump and bounce.
Today we're going to be taking these strays and turning them into a book safe. For those of you interested in building your own, I've made drawings. They're linked in the description below. For $10, you get both sets of drawings, imperial and metric units. Those combined with this companion video should get you through the build. Despite the old adage, don't judge a book by its cover, today we're exclusively judging these books by their cover. You're going to want to pick a color palette before you go into the thrift store or wherever you get your books from. I would suggest rehoming a book as opposed to buying new ones, because a lot of thrift stores just cycle these books in and out and end up throwing them away. So like mounting a deer, I think this is a better option for them as opposed to rotting in a landfill. When you're picking out your books, you're going to want to grab a few thicker ones, from 1 1/4 to 1 1/8 wide. You're going to need at least 3 or 4 of them for a build like this. Once you find a layout or an orientation that you like, it's time to cut the books down. I would absolutely recommend using a bandsaw. It leaves a much cleaner edge and it's much safer. Although you can use a table saw, but be careful. I don't have to tell you why. Books like to warp and move around. The pages are all moving individually. It's much safer to use a bandsaw, so even if you don't have one, I'd say it's almost worth buying one just for this process. Now, I've gotten some flack for this part here, cutting the books, and there's some people that are upset. So I thought a nice way to meet them in the middle would be to donate these to a scrapbook club, which my friend's mom has here, so they'll be put to good use. I'm sure she's on Etsy making custom ransom letters or something with them. I'm a big fan of a self-serving proposition disguised as a selfless gesture, so I'm going to be giving away 3 sets of drawings because I'm generous, and the funniest 3 comments in the next week after this video comes out, they get a set of drawings. And that's just because I'm feeling generous. It's not because it's going to help me get some comments and the algorithm will actually show this video to people. It's definitely just because I'm feeling generous. Being as that these books are covered in fabric, when you're done cutting, there's going to be some what we call tear out on the backside, which is just pieces of fabric hanging loose. When it comes to woodwork, tear out would be just chipping on the backside from the blade exiting the wood. To resolve that, we're just going to take it over to a sander and sand all that down. Now, even after you've sanded your books down, there's still going to be some fraying in the fabric, and for that I use a wood burner or a soldering iron, and I just melt it to the book. This also helps with any further fraying of the fabric. Yeah, love a good alliteration. Here's some of that fraying I was talking about, especially on books with fabric bindings. It's pretty prevalent. I'm sure everyone's dad gave him this speech at one point or another. Oh, look at that, son, it just doesn't work with the 2 boys. You put it together, doesn't reproduce. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dad. Wise. Very wise stuff.
Really gonna reuse the same joke from the first video?
Well, yeah, it was a great joke, and I don't see the point in not including it in the, Why isn't your voice shifted down or something? Would you just give up on characters? Am I just talking to myself on here now?
How does this sound?
Yeah, there we go. Beautiful. Welcome back to Schizophrenic Woodworking, everybody. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Alright, so that was just me killing some time there because it's just you watching me do some processes that I've already explained. So now that your books are cut and clean, it's time to move on to turning them into a solid piece of almost wood, basically, which is what I do when I put this glue on. Ultimately, the whole point of this process is to turn the book binding into one solidified, unified piece. If any of the tools or materials in this video spark your interest, there is a link in the description, and if you follow that, it'll take you to a list of basically everything I use. Once you have glue on all your books, you're going to want to put a little bit of pressure on the outsides like I am here on the table. This just ensures that the back of the book binding doesn't splay out and isn't wider than the front, because it's going to look very odd once it's on the unit. Alright, now that everything's cut, glued, and drying, it's time to move to the 2 latch pieces. We have a left and a right piece, and these books allow you to lock and unlock this book safe. We're going to start by debinding the books, just taking the pages out. Here I have 2 chunks of walnut. It's just what I had lying around. You can use whatever you want because you'll never see these 2 parts. Now, being that these 2 pieces slide past one another when it's locking and unlocking, I put a bevel on these. And if you're wondering why, when they're square, it creates a pinch point, a point of contention. Now, leaving these 2 latch pieces square would probably be fine, but for smoother operation, I put a bevel on these so that the right latch can nest right into the left latch. In the drawings, I don't show you where these magnets go specifically, but just center them up top to bottom on each and line them up together on the center of the width as well if you'd like. The precise placement of these is much less important than actually making sure that the magnets are attracted to one another in the correct orientation. Now, when it comes to attaching these magnets, you're going to want to scuff the back and the sides with some sandpaper. And this doesn't have to be pretty, this part, because it is covered with books. You'll never see these once they're covered. All we're doing when we scuff these is creating cracks and crevices for that glue to squeeze into and grab onto. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to hold the magnet because it's too smooth. I even go in after the fact and fill in some of the gaps around the magnet with glue so that it holds extra strong. If I have a little residual fog on the brain, I like to just put these magnets on the magnets that are already installed in the other piece so that there's no way to mess up the polars of these magnets. If you just scuff the back up, it puts marks on there and you'll know if it's the front or the back. Now you can flip these end to end and mess it up that way because they will not attract to one another. Once your magnets are in, you're going to want to glue the binding all the way around on the right latch piece. On your left latch piece, you're not going to want to do that yet. You're going to want to make sure the right side is still loose. I just put double-sided tape on this one to hold it in the meantime. Another thing to note when you're picking out your books is try to find one nice book or 2 for this latch here. It's kind of cool that this one says Illusions, the original said Beautiful Lies, one of the other books down the line says One of Us is Lying. I mean, we're almost just scrapbooking here, so why not go the extra mile? Later in this video, we're actually going to pull that back and put screws through that into the carcass to hold it to the unit, and we want those to be covered as well. So that's why we're using double-sided tape instead of glue here. Now that we're done with the latch pieces, it's time to move on to the tambour slats themselves that attach to the books. I like to go through and measure 3 or 4 different spots on the back of each book binding and find the most average measurement of each and write that down with one of the words from the title. Once I have all those measurements, I like to go through and just group all the similar measurements together so that I have one nice list again. Now this is a good use for going through your scrap pile and getting rid of some of that extra. I always start with my biggest measurement and just rip them down to that. I had a friend tell me I should be putting memes up on these videos and trying to keep everyone engaged by flashing things on the screen. Now in my eyes, that's insulting. It's like shaking keys in your face. So in lieu of doing that, I'm just going to up the production value, so please let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Now, along with the latch books, this is one of the other problems with this build that I had to work out. Some of these books are too wide, and if I were to just put a piece of wood on the back, it wouldn't be able to slide in the slot. So I figured if I just notch the corners and make the piece that's actually in the slot essentially just 5/8 of an inch wide, all of these books can slide freely in the slot regardless of their actual width. So that's what we're doing here. This is pretty time consuming, You're going to want to really sand the corners and edges down of these slats, the parts that go in the slots at least, because these do want to hang up when they're in there. They have weight on the front of them. They got to turn a weird corner, which you're going to see here in a little bit. So do yourself a favor and really sand these corners down, round them over. Once you have all your books attached to your slats, you're going to notice that at the top you can see the walnut. So introducing some pretty black paint that absorbs light so that when you look back here you don't see anything. And when I'm doing it here you can see some light. But once these are in the cabinet and under the shadow of the top plate of this carcass, you don't see these. They just look like the deep inside of a cabinet beyond the books. So when it comes to attaching these books to the slats, you can just use nails through the back. These will be covered with leather. These are essentially just here to hold the book to the slat until the glue dries. Now we're moving back over to the latch pieces. You're going to want to attach the right latch piece, which is the second book from the left, to the piece to the right of it. Now I know that's confusing, just listen to it a few times, it makes sense, or just watch the video here. We're going to attach those together because you want your right latch piece to be floating. You don't want that to be in the tambour track. Once you join those two books, we're going to move one slot over and we're going to put some magnets between the third and the fourth book. And this just helps bring that right latch forward so that it actually engages with the left latch and locks in place. Without these magnets, you would have to slam the door and use momentum to get the latch to actually lock in place. At the end of the video, you'll be able to see me slowly close the door and it still engages, so this is the correct way to do it. The placement of these little magnets is not in the drawings, but put them where you see I'm putting them here. It's not crucial where they go, it just matters that they are attracted to one another on either side and they're in the same spot on each slat. And now we move on to the final process of making the door itself. The easiest way I found to put glue on the backs of these doors is to lay two pieces of wood out and put the slats across those so that the tongues rest on either piece. This gives you a nice flat back so that you can spray your adhesive or roll your adhesive. You can use contact cement if you'd like. I like to use 3M77. This stuff works fine and doesn't leave a residue behind that you can see between. The important thing to note here is to make sure that the slats are square to the leather so that the leather doesn't trail off and, move down or up as you put books on. And you also want the books to be square and parallel to one another. Every 3 or 4 books, I like to measure from the furthest right book and make sure I have a nice parallel equal measurement. And there you have it, the tambour door is done. Now that it's finished, we can move on to the carcass. To get your interior width of your carcass, you're going to want to lay your door down and you're going to get the measurement from the furthest right book to the furthest left latch. You're going to add 1/8 of an inch to that, and that is the interior width of your carcass. A carcass is the 4 walls that make up a cabinet, if you didn't know. The final width of all your books is what's going to determine the width of your cabinet and the width of your tambour track template. I explain that further in the 4th page in the drawings, which again are linked in the description. Anytime you're using a flush cut bit with a router and a template, you're going to want to make sure that you put the pressure in towards the template and that you are running in the correct direction that the router blade is spinning. Both of those combined will get you a nice, clean, even track. At the end of the project, when we install the door for the final time, we put lock plates back here. You'll see what those are later in the video. If you're watching this and you're new to woodworking, we just use chisels like this to get a nice flat edge, because freehanding with a router isn't necessarily precision work. Once your tambour track is routed out, it's time to grab your door and measure and make sure A, that your width of your plate is 1/8 of an inch larger than your door, and B, you're going to make a mark. You're going to find your last tooth on your tambour slat, and in this I went 1/2 of an inch over, you see here. I would suggest going 1 inch or 3/4 at the least. I did 1/2 an inch because when you're opening this door, it actually has a bit of a pop to it every time a book passes through. It's almost like a drawbridge, an old tactile feel to it. If you want it to operate smoother, definitely go probably 1 inch away. Once you have that marked, go back and mark where your last tooth was, and you're just going to connect that bottom right line to the top left. As I said, it's going to be much smoother if that line is 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch at the least over from your last tooth on your books. This roll of tape was 6 inches in diameter, and all we're doing here is creating a transition to send those books back in the slot. Now, between sanding the bottoms of your slats and adjusting this corner ever so slightly with chisels and sandpaper, this is going to take the most time on the whole project, I'd say, getting this door to operate the way you'd like. So take your time and be patient. Don't be afraid to put some paste wax in the slot. That's going to help monumentally, and at the end of the project we're going to put paste wax in anyway, so just make sure that when you put it in, if you get any on the surface of the wood outside of the track, you need to sand that off before you finish. I mean, here we are inlaying a light. If you've watched a video on this channel before, you already know this process. It's probably annoying at this point. All the template measurements are also in those drawings, imperial and metric. And for the $10 price point, they're both included. Now it's time to assemble the carcass. We're doing simple butt joints with trim head screws and 1/4 inch dowels on this one. This video specifically is not to impress, but to teach and inspire. If you want to see me overdo it, go watch the original version of this. It's twice as long and full of intricacies. Now, I'm not going to lie, I thought I'd get a lot of flack for using trim head screws in these videos, but I haven't gotten much, honestly. I mean, I understand these aren't exactly, pieces of art. We're not chiseling the statue of David here. If I was, I'd probably give him pants or something, because that's crazy to do the guy like that. But I like using trim head screws when I need some rigidity, some strength. Don't be afraid to use screws if you can, and hide them. Just try to hide them. Be tactful, be classy about it. Being that I've made a few of these already at this point, I knew that this door was going to fit, so I didn't dry test this at all. You're going to want to slide your completed door in, and then put your left latch piece in after the fact, and put it in a place that looks good. Once it's in place, draw a line on the backside so you know where it goes. These are the lock plates I was talking about. Once you put the door in, you screw this into the back and it doesn't let the door slide out of that track. It just mimics the part we took out with the router. And then on top of that goes the French cleat. Here's the decorative frame we make for the inside. You can do whatever you want on this. The width of this will also be determined by the width of your door. So what's in the drawings is what worked for mine. You use your judgment and make the width that's appropriate for yours. I made a simple picture frame here, butt joints. Trim head screws on the outsides, nice and high and far away from the center of the board, so that when I'm routing the channel in the back here, the rabbet, it doesn't hit any of those trim head screws. Now's the time where you go through every piece of the project and you hit any sharp edges with some sandpaper. Especially in the tambour track itself. Spend some serious time on sanding because it'll show in the end finish if you were lazy with that. This piece is a gift for a client, and it's some of the most beautiful wood I've used on this channel yet, and I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. The door operates and functions very smoothly. Now it takes a bit to get there, so when yours is finished and hanging, if you have problems with your door still, It's a bit bumpy. Give it some time. You need to put paste wax in that slot daily for 3 or 4 days. And just practice some patience. Now that everything's dry, we're going to assemble the decorative panel that goes inside. All I've done here is taken some metal mesh and put it in there. Put a few what I would call risers in there around the perimeter so that there's a shadow gap between the leather that I've glued to some MDF here, 1/4 inch MDF, and I put that in there and it leaves a nice shadow with the light in front of it. Now we're attaching the left latch book to the carcass. You're going to put a bunch of paste wax in the slot. You don't want it to goop up, but you want to spread it around on the sides and the bottom of the actual track. When you're attaching your French cleat to your carcass, you're going to want to make sure to not glue anything. You want to be able to take that off and take your lock plate off to remove the door if any adjustments are needed. So make sure everything is removable. Now, no shame to the dirtbags who built this house and made the studs 24 on center because they're cheap, but I could only use one screw when mounting the French cleat on this without putting a big hole in the wall for a drywall anchor. And that's why you see movement in the cabinet when I open and close the door. So I definitely suggest using 2 when you're hanging yours. As I said, be patient with the door, put some paste wax in it for a few days, let it dry, operate the door a bunch after you put the paste wax in. It'll wear down the areas that the wood needs to so it actually slides smooth in that track. And yet again, a wholesome, family-oriented woodworking video comes to a close. I assume if you're still here, you enjoyed the video, so subscribe, obviously. If you didn't enjoy it and you're still here, go have a talk with yourself. That's weird behavior. And click the link in the description if you want to buy the drawings. Buy it for you, buy it for a friend, buy it for a foe, I don't care. And I appreciate you dearly. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Love you. Goodbye. What's that about then over there? Horrible improv. What's going on down yonder, huh?
What about that there shiver plat?
Yeah.
Boy?
That's real silver.